What is going on, guys? Welcome back to the show. We hope you are having a great weekend so far. And today's topic is going to be about optimization and perfectionism and the fine line between the two. We discussed some interesting topics today, and we are really excited to show you this one. We hope you enjoy, and we will see you in the show. All right, welcome back. Episode number 6. How you feeling?
Pretty good. Just worked a long shift, so I'm ready to talk for 2 hours.
Yeah, let's do it. So starting off, I think we should define the two topics we're talking about, optimization and perfectionism. So basically, if you just Google perfectionism, it says it's the refusal of any act short of perfection. And then optimization is the act of making the best effort or most effective use of a given situation or resource. So given those definitions, what would be your connotative view of these topics?
I don't know. I have mixed views because while I think optimization is a key to success in a lot of places, I do think too much of it can be a bad thing.
Mm-hmm.
And also perfectionism, I have a rough relationship with because I am a perfectionist, and I struggle with it a lot because it's like very remedial, simple tasks can be very hard for me to do because if I can't do them perfectly, if I don't have the time to do them perfectly, or I don't have the motivation to do them perfectly, I just won't do them whatsoever and push them off and procrastinate them because I can't do them perfect, and it leads into a cycle of just procrastinate, get it perfect, and stress about it until I can get it done perfect.
Mm-hmm.
So I don't know. I have very mixed views on them.
Yeah, I think perfectionism is interesting. I'm actually excited to dive deep into this topic because I read on some few things, and it's pretty interesting. I feel like my view on it is that obviously it's in the name, like perfectionism is trying to be as perfect as you can, and then for me, optimization is trying to get basically like the most best for your buck type of whatever you're doing. Get for your input the most efficient, most productive output you could possibly get.
Yeah.
So I think going off that and what you've had to say, I think that we should start going into kind of like the pros and cons of perfectionism.
Yeah.
So what I wanted to bring up initially is I saw this thing, and I read this thing or listened to this thing from Thomas Curran. He's a psychologist who actually wrote a book on perfectionism, and he said that there's 3 different types of perfectionism. So we'll just go through each one and discuss. So the first one is self-oriented perfectionism, which is the intrinsically driven to want to be perfect. For example, if you screw up or fall short, you're hard on yourself, or if you don't feel that you perform perfectly, you feel that you have guilt or shame. So you have super high standards. So you're it's hard to derive like a sense of satisfaction and any type of accomplishment because you feel that you can always be doing better. So I think that's such an interesting topic because with these 3 that we'll go over, I feel like you could either be one of them or all 3.
Yeah.
So it's just kind of like the sense of, it's more of like you feel like you need to be perfect all the time. And I do think I correlate to or resonate with this topic a little bit for the fact that I do have some harsh times where I think that I should be doing better, but then I think they also go into the other topics. So how would you think, do you think you would probably...
I think I definitely fit into that realm because I do get down on myself. That's the biggest reason that I am a perfectionist, because if I don't do it perfect, I get really down on myself, and I'm like, what the fuck is wrong with you? You could have done better. And it takes a lot out of me. So I feel like I definitely fall into that realm too. Because the one thing mentally, I have so many undiagnosed mental problems, I'm pretty sure, but the one thing I have actually been diagnosed with is OCD.
Okay.
And I feel like that definitely goes hand in hand with perfectionism because that's pretty much the textbook definition of OCD is the things that you think need to be perfect or it's going to stress you out and cause you anxiety and grief.
Of course. It's funny because like there's the way that I can think about this type of perfectionism is like kind of like the concept of gaining quick fame. So like, for example, if you were to post a video on TikTok and blow up overnight, or post a video on YouTube and blow up overnight, this will relate to like if, like I said, how it relates to like the accomplishments, that's now your sense of technically perfect. Like you posted this video, maybe you didn't really think of it as perfect, but it got a lot of views or you got a lot of traction from it. So that's your new level, like your new foundation for like what you should be doing. So it kind of like, once you have this sense of overnight, like get that sense of overnight sensation, that's your new goal to be perfect. And if you don't either meet that goal or surpass it, you're just going to have a sense of like, just like failure. Yeah, definitely. So yeah, you feel insufficient because of that.
Yeah.
So then there's a couple other ones, like I said. So the next one would be socially prescribed perfectionism, which is rooted in the perception of others. Yeah. So it's like the fact of you also think that you expect yourself to be perfect, but you think others expect you to be perfect as well. So even they might not, but you just have this perception that everyone around you, whether it's like your inner circle or just the general public, thinks you're supposed to be perfect at the same time, along with your, already self kind of like doubt that you need to be perfect. So I feel like I also resonate with this one too, because I feel like I more resonate than with this rather than the self-oriented one, for the fact that I do kind of go off of like what other people are thinking. I feel like if someone gives me a reaction to something I either did or like a project or something that I worked on, I feel like if they don't give me a good response to it, I feel like I'm sort of a failure, even though, it depends on who it is, of course, but I feel like you can't, like, I feel like even though they have like a certain opinion, you shouldn't always base your accomplishments off of that. And this is kind of like my aspect when I used to post YouTube videos, when I would, or I guess not post YouTube videos or tweets or whatever. I feel like I've tweeted or wrote up so many tweets and just deleted them because I felt like someone's going to be like, why is he posting this? Like, he's not someone that's motivational. He's not someone that's disciplined. Or I would go and start editing like a Rust video or a vlog, and I would see that there was something kind of off, and I'd be like, oh, someone's going to notice that. So it's just, it's too much for me to be like, okay, it's not perfect enough, I'm just going to cut it and not post it at all. So I wonder, like, how do you feel about this type of perfectionism?
I mean, I'm the same way with that too. I mean, you saw it on the camera. I smiled when you started defining it, because I was like, fuck, that's me too. Because I mean, like, you've known me forever. I've always enjoyed the thought of being a content creator, but I've never even put in the effort of making YouTube videos. I mean, I made like Minecraft speedrun videos on like prison servers when I was like 12 and 13, and those are the only YouTube videos I ever posted, or that my knife game video.
Dude, but, that's crazy.
Yeah, like I feel like whatever I would create would never be good enough for the general public, and it wouldn't get views anyways, so what's the point of putting it out there? Like, I
see, yeah, I see I see that, but then there's also like, in a way, if no one's going to be seeing it anyways, why does it matter?
Yeah, and that's a good way to think, but it's also hard to, I mean, with me being very anxious, it's hard to put that out there just for fear of like for my pride. Like, like, what if everyone else absorbs this as fucking stupid and makes fun of me? And then it's, and in my head, I overthink that, and it's not worth it for me to post it because of it. Because I do feel like the opinions on my work of the people around me is very important to me too. I mean, I do beat myself up over it, but I feel like at the same time, I'd probably beat myself up more if other people are giving me bad feedback on it. And I really I don't like bad feedback, so I try to make everything as perfect as possible.
Yeah, I think I also don't like bad feedback, but I've been trying to to take it more.
It's something that you need to progress and grow, but it is hard to take. I will say that.
Yeah, because it's like, I heard I think it was this Thomas Curran guy talking to somebody else, and he was saying how like it's really hard to post or publish a book trying to be as perfect as possible, and then going into like the Amazon store and looking at the 1-star reviews and seeing all the things that, people thought were imperfect, like every single 1-star review saying that this was wrong, or you didn't format this right, or I didn't like this topic. That's going to be some sort of imperfection that you technically didn't see. That's why I think realistically perfectionism is subjective, really subjective to everyone, because like I said, you could post a video or publish a book and you could think it's perfect, right? But someone will take something the wrong way, or not think it was formatted right, or you didn't like how you type this specific thing up, and then they're going to comment on it and be like, wow, this wasn't perfect. Like, I didn't like this. And you're going to be like, wow, especially if you're a socially prescribed perfectionist, it's like, you're going to feel that you're
a failure.
You're a failure because of other people. And I think that's really interesting too. So, and then moving on to like the third one, this is actually really interesting as well. It's other oriented perfectionism. So it's the expectation of others to be perfect. So you're expecting others to meet your standards. So for example, if you're at work and you need somebody to complete a project at your level, at your type of level, let's say you need a coding project, just for example, you need someone to complete it as efficient as you are, or as efficient as like your senior or whatever, and they're not able to do that. You either wonder why they can't do that, or scold them for doing that, or kind of push them away and rather not help them because you think that they should be at a higher standard.
Yeah.
And I definitely think I do that a lot too. Because things are super simple things. It's like, come on, like I do think you should be able to do that. But then it's also, I feel like this quote really resonates with this. It's unset expectations are premeditated resentments.
Yeah.
So it's like, the more that you're not going to go up to that person and say like, hey, you're doing this wrong, the more time is going to allow you to kind of sit in that like disgust of being imperfect, that's going to either allow for more tension or allow for more resentment.
That's scary to think about, because that's me on the T too. Like, there will be times where like I know 100% someone's going to do something right,
mm-hmm.
and I will still watch them do it, because even if they're doing it right, I don't know if they're going to do it identical to how I do it. And in my head, the way that I do it is the perfect way to do it. So I sometimes will micromanage because of that.
Mm-hmm.
And just, I get really, really upset when people don't have baseline knowledge on things, like things that they should know. Like at work, for example, if someone doesn't know how to do a very simple task, it upsets me. And I will tell them that they're doing it wrong, but at the same time, I almost feel like a control freak sometimes, which I have been working on. I've been trying not to do it as much, because I know it's not a good thing to do. You should have trust in the people around you and what they can do. But because I'm such a perfectionist and I can be a control freak sometimes, it's hard for me to just ignore it and say, yeah, they're going to do it right. I have to watch over and make sure they're going to do it right and do it how I would do it.
Mm-hmm.
And even if they're doing it right, but they're not doing it how I would do it, sometimes I'll still step in and say, hey, you should do it like this. It's easier this way. It's better this way, just to convince them to do it my way, because I think my way is better.
Yeah. I do catch myself doing that as well. I think that I look at somebody doing something, and instead of, I think I don't really put myself in their shoes sometimes and try to understand like why they're doing it a certain way, instead of like going up to them and like, for example, I would just go up to them and be like, why are you doing it that way? Like, or did you know that you're supposed to do it this way? And that honestly, I think is not really the best, for the fact that like in last podcast where we talked about telling someone they're wrong, it's the same thing. So, or like how you said that, you know, allowing people to teach themselves how to do things specifically, you know, it's kind of like the same thing. So,
I mean, like, and yeah, I see both sides of it too, and I will try, even if I'm being a control freak and I'm trying to change the way that they'll do something, I at least try to sugarcoat it a bit and be like, hey, have you ever thought about trying it this way? And then convincing them that that way is better, instead of saying you're doing this wrong.
mm-hmm.
So I try to sugarcoat it a bit at least, but it is still a habit that I need to break, because I do it too much. And it's to the point where like if I've tried to do it to someone a few times, even if they're like doing it wrong and I've tried to fix it a few times and they just don't absorb it, I just like, after that point, have to walk away and just ignore it and pretend it's not happening. Otherwise, I'm going to be frustrated.
Yeah, because I feel like at that point, it's just such a mental strain that they're getting it done anyways, that
it's not worth your stress.
Yeah, it's not worth like really trying to be perfect. That's why I think being perfect is subjective, because it's like someone could get the same thing done in a different way. That's when I think optimization comes in, because it's like your thing could be maybe more optimized than the way that they're doing it, but
it's still
that's perfect to them.
Yeah,
the other way is perfect to you. And then before I actually saw these two or the three types of perfectionisms, I had like kind of my own two types, and one was like someone that's going to start something. Like for example, me, I would start creating a video and I would see one thing wrong with it and I would just scrap it, right? And I think there's the other one where someone's going to put as much effort as possible until something's near perfect, until something's like there's maybe some minuscule things. Like for example, there's a really good example with Chris Williamson on Modern Wisdom. He said how he's a perfectionist, but the way that he's a perfectionist is like, okay, because he puts out super high quality podcasts, like 4K cinematic, whatever, if everything doesn't look right in different platforms, like it doesn't look right, it looks different than it does in Premiere Pro that it looks on YouTube, or it looks different on Spotify or TikTok or something. It just everything's, maybe there's small minuscule details. That's still not perfect enough for him to post. So he's like, I'm telling my group, I'm telling my team that's fixing this, that we need to fix this before it gets out. So it's someone that pushes their limits to actually get towards as near perfect. But then they also have a side where it's like, if we're going to post reels, where like reels are you kind of have more high volume on it. You're going to post multiple, like throughout the entire week. If there's like a caption or something that's wrong, you're going to be like, they're just going to be like, whatever, it's fine. There's so many of them, like it doesn't really matter in the end. And he actually has a really good quote about this, and it's perfectionism is a masquerade for procrastination, because that's exactly in my sense. It's like I tell myself that it's not perfect, so I'm just going to scrap it and just say I'm just not going to do it. And I think that's a really good insight, because for those people who are relating the definition of perfectionism to procrastination, I think they don't necessarily realize it. They're telling themselves, they're trying to manipulate themselves and tell themselves that they're something isn't perfect enough just because they're either anxious or scared about posting it. And I think that's something that people should really try to change.
Yeah. And I mean, I do have an understanding of that because I literally said it's perfectionism leads into my procrastination and limits the things that I could be doing because I don't think I'm going to do them perfect. And I have an understanding that is why it happens, but it's still hard to break the cycle, because I feel like perfectionism, a lot of it comes from just anxiety and thinking, even if it may be good enough in other people's eyes, it's not good enough in your eyes, and you don't want to ever show it to the world. And that's why you keep telling yourself it's not perfect, because in your eyes, I don't think you could ever make it perfect in some scenarios.
Yeah, it's like a feeling of deficit, like feeling that you're never perfect enough for other people. So like obviously that really kind of resonates with like the socially prescribed. So I think that's super interesting, because I feel like, especially with like the videos that I maybe have posted, or like the tweets that I maybe have posted, if I didn't have all these things in my mind, thinking about other people, thinking about being, correct grammar on my tweets, or this thing has to look a specific way. My thing to people is, if you think that way, you never know, or if like you don't post it, you'll never know what that video could have done, right? So who knows if, like, I had this really this awesome video idea for like 20 hours of footage of Rust, and I thought the video would probably do really well if I actually continue to work on it and post it. But because something was like a little off, I was like, whatever. So I would have never known, like I will never know what that video could have done. But it's not just the fact that, like, especially when it comes to the socially prescribed, it's not just how other people would have viewed it or whatever, but the skills that you would have learned from just simply trying to do that task without the sense of trying to be perfect, you gain so much more from actually just doing it rather than not doing it.
And with content creating, at least specifically, I feel like another aspect of perfectionism is I'd be scared to upload videos because, like, I play Counter-Strike a lot, obviously. So many people over the last 20 years have made Counter-Strike content that I feel like I wouldn't be able to do anything new that's worthwhile for people to come see, because there's already so many established people.
You think it's oversaturated?
Yeah, exactly. I think it's oversaturated, and oversaturation makes me think that I can't be as perfect as these other people because they've been doing it for so much longer than me, and it kind of deters the motivation to do it.
I think something that helped me when it comes to when I used to post stuff is realize that you are different than other people. So like, yes, you may be posting videos of similar content. I mean, it really depends on if you're just posting strictly gameplay, or like if you're going to post
like your
personality with gameplay. Obviously, that's literally its own genre to begin with. Like, you are your own genre. So I think trying to have that mindset of like, yes, it may be oversaturated, but you still have a chance for the fact that you are different. Like, this guy told me at the gym that I actually had that same view when it came to making gym videos. And he's like, dude, there's so much money going everywhere, especially with TikTok and Reels and all the organic reach. Like, you have a chance to just like blow up and make a bunch of money. It's not oversaturated. People just don't want to technically put into work. And I think that's what it does come to, because you make so many videos, but you have to realize at some point that, is your content like actually worthwhile? Like, is it providing value? And like, is it actually engaging? Because like, you could post, if you don't have like a personality or whatever, and you yeah, maybe you do post like the same videos as somebody else, somebody that does have a personality will actually make it over you, for the fact that people are actually going to be wanting to be interested in that.
Yeah. It's just, I don't know. I feel like perfectionism is, yes, I feel like it's hard to say for me that it can be a good thing, but there are scenarios that it can be a good thing. But overall, I feel like perfectionism only holds you back. I feel like it's almost, I wouldn't say the polar opposite of optimization, but I feel like perfectionism takes away from optimization 100%.
I think perfectionism will definitely lead into like more negative things than optimization would.
Yeah.
For the fact that I think by constantly thinking that you're not enough, constantly getting to these poor mental states, you end up getting depressed and stuff. And I think that obviously will deepen that sense of perfectionism, that lack of feeling perfect, or the insecurity that you're not good enough for people. And that's why, I mean, I do have a better sense of optimization, and why I think it eventually can get to a point where it's negative. And I think that's where we should start like delving into how over optimization is kind of a negative thing.
Yeah.
But I think optimization is a better route. I think you can be an optimalist can be a perfectionist, but a perfectionist cannot be an optimalist.
Yeah.
I think it's optimalist because it's like, I feel like my sense of definition for optimalist is, like I said, is getting the most bang for your buck, but that requires like input to output. So if something doesn't work, you keep trying it until you find something that works better. And that is something that I feel like a perfectionist wouldn't do, because they would either not even finish that thing once, or they would do it and it wouldn't be perfect and they just would stop doing it completely.
That's another good example of the that pot story that we talked about a couple weeks ago, where if one person spends an entire semester doing one pot and trying to make it perfect, they're not going to get as good of results as the person that made 100 pots all semester, because you need optimization and you need to try new things to really make the perfect product. If you think in your head you can create the perfect product, you just need more time, and you only work on what you think is perfect and you don't try new ideas to find that perfection, you're never gonna find it, because you're stuck in your own ideals and you think, yeah, I can make it perfect, but I'm not gonna take the time to do it. And it just, I really think perfectionism is mostly negative because of that.
Definitely leads into more mental, negative mental state for sure.
It is. I mean, it causes a lot of mental strain for me, just because I've fallen into the patterns of perfectionism so heavy. I don't really have any optimization in my life. Like, I kind of just go with the flow day by day. I don't have a set schedule for anything. Those things are hard for me to do, because in my head I'm like, I can't plan out the perfect day. I can't plan out the perfect week. I can't plan out the perfect month. So why should I even get into the routines? And it's hard for me to build routines because of that.
So you would say that you don't really have anything that have you tried to optimize things before, and has there been a reason like
no,
why it hasn't?
Because I'm so scared to do it, because I'm scared I'm not going to do it perfectly. So it's not worth my time to do it in my head, because I don't want to spend the time figuring out what the perfect thing is. I want it to just walk up and knock on my door and say, hey, do it like this. So I never want to take the time to do it because of it.
So you think this is like a sense of like you've built a distrust in yourself that you're not able to optimize things over a certain period of time?
Almost, yeah. It's just, I don't know. It's really just, I'm scared that my routine isn't going to be the perfect routine for me and I'm going to give it up. So why should I even try doing it in the first place? Like, I'm scared I'm going to have a good routine in my head for 3 weeks and then I'm going to get tired of it and be like, this isn't good anymore. I give up. And if I'm going to give up in 3 weeks, why should I even start? And that's kind of the mindset I have. And I know it's really bad, but it's hard to break out of.
I think you do have like I think it's good to know that you kind of have a problem with that.
Yeah.
And especially even talking about it now, I feel like I think with this conversation, I think you will have like a new sense of like maybe how to optimize things or like, the difference between perfectionism or optimization or whatever. Going to like my sense of like optimization, I feel like I've definitely tried to optimize things with school, work, exercise, or just like regular, nutrition or sleep. So one of the main things is like my biggest thing was definitely trying to optimize my training to like a T. I started writing everything down in either a notebook or an app. And depending on what I hit for that week, whether it's weights or reps, I would, in a way, it's kind of like progressively overloading like your weights over a specific time period. But I would make sure that I would take a certain drink before a workout. I would make sure I try to get as much sleep. I would have to make sure I have to eat a certain thing before the gym. And especially with TikTok and stuff, you hear like, oh, what's the best thing to do before a workout? Or what's the best pre-workout to do or take, whatever. That kind of gives you or give me a sense of like, okay, I need this to be able to perform in a certain way. And that's when I think the negative side to optimization comes in, because I think the general idea of optimization where you like are working on something constantly, like it sounds positive. The constant, working on something to make it better over time is a positive idea. But when it comes to the point where you micromanage, where like I feel like where I don't feel like I can act on something because I didn't do something in my routine. Specific example to that, it's like if I didn't take pre-workout before my leg day, I wouldn't be able to hit a certain weight that day, and that whole training session would be scrapped. It wouldn't be a good training session because I didn't hit something that I was supposed to hit.
Yeah.
So obviously there is a connection between like optimization and going into perfectionism because of that.
Yeah.
And that's why I think it turns into like the negative part is when you try to micromanage so many things and you believe you make a kind of like a pact with like this certain routine that this is how you're supposed to do things. And if you don't, it's going to be for the worse.
Yeah.
And that's why I really think that that's like the negative part of optimization. And you just really need to try and build trust in yourself that you can do things without specific conditions.
Without it being perfect.
Yeah.
I said I've never really tried to optimize. More recently, I have been trying a little bit to get into a better schedule, but I still don't feel like I've really hit the nail on the head for full optimization. It's kind of just like I'm trying to be in bed before like 2 or 2:30 in the morning. I've been most days trying to eat breakfast. I have our set recording day now. So I have gotten into a little bit of a schedule, but it's still nowhere near where I need to be. But also, I feel like a big part of it, now that I've been doing it for 2.5 years, is the fact that I value my free time so much because I've had that go with the flow mindset for as long as I can remember. And it's hard for me to get into a schedule because of being a closer and working 1 to 9:30 almost every day. And I feel like it really takes away my day. And I feel like I lose my day every time I work because I find it really hard to do. If I work, I can't do anything before work. I don't know. I think I've read online somewhere that it's a sign of like ADHD, where like I have to do this in 6 hours, so I have to prepare for it for the next 6 hours and can't do anything before. So I stay up as late as I can to kind of take my day back, take my time back that I've been losing because I can't do anything before work. So because of that, I sleep as long as possible, wake up at the last moment possible, get ready for work and go to work. And then my free time is my time after work, and I don't want to do anything in that time because I'm taking my time back and it's the only free time I have. And then at the same time, when I have days off, it's like I don't want to do anything because it's my day off. And the only days I feel like I'm really, really productive are the days that like a couple of Thursdays ago when I worked 7 to 12 with you. And we went to the gym, we recorded, and I felt really productive that day. But if it's not a day like that where I work early and then get things done, I feel like I'm never getting anything done. And it pushes me back into that pit of my schedule's not perfect, so why should I even try?
So what do you think could help you get more towards that want to become more optimized in, work-life balance or doing things that you want to do or some stuff like that?
I feel like, honestly, finding a different job that pays me a little better, because I feel like that would take away a little bit of stress of losing my time. Whereas, like, if I could work a job that I'm working 7 to 3 every day, or 9 to 5 every day, or 8 to 4, and I have a regular person's work schedule, I wouldn't feel like I'm losing as much time, and I feel like it would help me get into a stricter schedule and start bettering myself in that aspect. Because right now it's just, I feel like my life's so hectic in that aspect that I'm too far gone, and it's very hard for me to start getting into good habits because of that.
What's interesting is that I think that, trying to figure out how to optimize your life as much as possible, that also does kind of lead into more negativity, I think.
Because you're trying to be perfect with your optimization.
Yeah, because I think when you spend so much time optimizing things, like for my example as well, you take away from other things, and you kind of like I said, even with perfectionism, you like build that distrust in yourself, and you kind of get in that mindset that because I'm not doing this in a better way, because I can't find a better way to do this or whatever, you kind of lack that sense of like trust in yourself that you can do more than you think you can. And I think also when it comes to kind of like psychological effects, when you try to over optimize, it leads to lack of like relationships, or like it causes like loss of relationships as well. Because for example, I know I for sure put stress on like Nila when I tell her I have to go to bed at 7 or at 9 for a certain time, just because I need to get a certain amount of sleep. We're either rushing to do certain things because it's getting late enough. But I also think it leads into like the possibility that once you have something so optimized, like for the fact that you just stop showing up to certain things, or you just say no to everything, you will lose those relationships for the fact that you just, no one wants to ask you because you're so caught up in like doing everything so perfect or doing something so optimized that it just like pushes you away from people.
Yeah. And I mean, that's another side of the spectrum that I'm scared of too, I feel like, because I don't want to hit that point of I'm too busy and I have such a set schedule that I can't, like, I don't have any blocks of time that I'm free to help my friends with something, or go get food, or go take a vacation, because I'm so set into this schedule that I cannot break it. Otherwise, I'm going to lose my fucking mind. Mm-hmm. And that's another side of it that scares me a lot.
And that's how I think you really need to find like that healthy balance of like optimization and then the acceptance of being imperfect, because I think that's the only way to kind of find that sense of like you're doing okay. Like you don't have more insecurity because you're not being perfect. Like for example, with the topic of like me making sure I go to bed at a certain time, right? I'm trying to be more, not willing, but just be more open-minded that just because I go to bed a little later than usual on a few nights that I have to wake up early, it's not going to kill me. Like it's not going to make that big of a difference. That that half hour, those 10 to 15 minutes that you could spend with your loved ones or whoever it is going to be worth more than it would be to just be in bed for that little extra time. And that's when I think you can start working towards like the balance between like a healthy balance of trying to be optimized.
Yeah. So, I mean, like, yes, optimization can be a great tool. Where are some other places that you feel you've over-optimized your life, and how did it affect you mentally and maybe even physically when you did? I mean, obviously you said if you didn't take your pre-workout, you could not hit legs because in your mind you didn't have the energy to do it, and it's kind of psychology too. But where are some other places that you feel that you over-optimized that it negatively affected you?
Back when I was playing Fortnite, I would try and over-optimize my environment in terms of the keyboard, the mouse, the headset, everything that I was using.
Had to be in the same place.
Not even had to be in the same place. So, for example, if I had a tournament that day, whatever, or I had a week of tournaments where I just played like shit. Now, this goes back to like obviously, I didn't really play that much. I didn't really practice as much as I should. But this goes back to that. And it's like I convinced myself that I was good enough. But when I didn't perform, I felt like I needed to optimize my things that I was using, my keyboard, my mouse. I would buy different mouses, buy different keyboards, buy different headsets to make me have a sense that that's what's wrong. Like I was trying to push push like the blame on everything that I was using.
It's not you, it's the peripherals.
Yes. So I was blaming that, and that I was trying to optimize my environment instead of like actually changing my mindset on like getting things done and working on to better myself. And that's why I also think that perfectionism and optimization can lead into a sense of consumerism, because everybody nowadays, especially with social media, is falling under the trap of consumerism, thinking that because they wear this, it's going to make them look better. Because I buy this pre-workout or certain supplement, it's going to make me perform better in the gym.
Yeah, I'm gonna
Same
buy
thing.
Some Tren.
Yes, take steroids early on, or take PEDs early on to try and optimize your chances at becoming who you want to be. That's where I think that was like one of the situations that I can really think of, is trying to optimize my environment when I really had to optimize myself or just change how I did things in general. And that's one of the that's why I think I can lead into like one of the main issues with trying to over optimize or trying to be perfect is the sense of over consumerism. Yeah. And I think is so apparent now with social media.
Yeah. So to bounce off that, where has optimization benefited you heavily? Like, where do you think you've seen the most gain in something that you've found the optimal way to do?
So, yes, I can say that my sleep and my training may have been over optimized. There's still a positive aspect to that. I still have, at some point I decided to take lifting as pretty serious. Like I said, write down your weights. Like obviously, like just the sense of writing down like the weights and reps isn't necessarily, it's not negative at all. Yeah. But obviously once you get into like I said earlier, it is a little bit negative, but I think it gets to a point where it is super positive. So like when I was writing down my weights, making sure I was getting up at the right time to eat my meal and get my protein in and get enough sleep, that's when I saw the most growth. And then that goes into also optimally like actually doing certain workouts based on trying to be as optimized as possible in terms of like muscle growth. Yeah. And that's something that I think really has benefited me, especially like last year. I was like super hardcore into making sure everything was on point. And I did see the most progress in that. And I think that is super important when it comes to like when you want to make a change, you do need to have some sense of optimization. Yeah. Because without it, I think you're going to be less consistent. And like I said before, consistency won't guarantee that you'll succeed, but not being consistent will guarantee you won't. Yeah. So I think optimization really can lead into like being as consistent as possible with yourself, but then you kind of have to allow yourself to have that like balance as well.
See, like, that's another place where like I feel like I'm in that hellhole, because like I said, I can't in my mind do anything if I have something important like work to do that day. I cannot do anything before. And that stresses me out because of that, I usually always go to the gym after work. Like, especially recently, I've started going again, and it's always, unless I have the day off, it's always after work. So after working an 8-hour day, 8.5-hour day at work, then I'm going to the gym, and I feel like I never have the energy that I do on a day off of work versus going to the gym after work. And I could definitely remediate that problem by getting up earlier and going to the gym before work. But I'm scared to do it because I might not do it perfect. What if I miss the gym one day because I didn't wake up on time? So why should I change my schedule if I might miss that one day?
So do you think you've built trust in yourself even going after work? Because I think might not seem like you're optimizing but I think it still is, for the fact that that's the only time you can go during the day because of how you do things in the morning. You get up right before work and then you go. Do you think that's still, you're still optimizing by making sure you go?
Yeah.
Even after work, even after you're tired or a long day?
I mean, you could say that is optimization because I know for a fact I'm going to have the time after work. I'm not going to oversleep and miss the gym because I'm going after work instead of before. But optimizing in that sense, I feel like I lose out on my optimization of my gains.
So do you think that, would you say that, I would say that you have to kind of like align your goals then? Because like, I think you have to really want to see what your goal is in the gym. Because like, how much more input are you doing when you have an off day? Like, what would you say is the difference between a workout at the gym after work and then a workout before work on an off day?
Well, at the gym after work, it's literally leave work, go to the gym, change in the parking lot, go in, and I feel like I'm only in there for half an hour to 45 minutes. Whereas on an off day, I go at anywhere from like noon to 4, and I go get a ghost before because it's not going to keep me up all night. And I take my time. I'm not rushing through because I'm tired, because I want to go home and rest after 8 hours of work. And I do more. I focus on more muscle groups. I'm not skipping things because I'm tired. I hold myself more accountable when I go on an off day or if I went before work.
So do you think if you tried to hold yourself as accountable after work, you think that would probably help with trying to become more optimal or optimize?
I think it definitely would, but it's also sometimes it's hard to find that motivation and that effort when you're exhausted from work. But I mean, that's where discipline comes in.
Mm-hmm.
And I feel like it's a double-edged sword, because do I pick the side of building the discipline to go to bed earlier and wake up earlier and lose that time of taking my day back and discipline myself to go to work or go to the gym before work? Or do I find the discipline to power through when I'm exhausted after work and I don't want to? And it's kind of just, which battle do I want to choose?
I think that really just I think you just kind of have to figure out what
works better.
Well, not even what works better, because I do think that even though you're putting in work, and I think that's good enough. Like, I don't think you could look at yourself and do a workout after work and say, like, yes, cool, this could have been more optimal, but like, you still went. Like, it's still a certain amount of optimal. You still, had that discipline to still go after work. Yes, you could be doing more, but that I think could also be leading back to your perfectionism tendency, for the fact that you think that every workout needs to be perfect. And that's one thing that I think, not that I've optimized it, but you do have to realize that you're going to have bad workouts sometimes. And that also kind of alleviates the stress of trying to be so perfect and trying to be so optimal all the time.
Yeah.
Because you realize that as long as you're going there and giving good effort and just, even showing up, and you could show up and do 5 sets or whatever, or one set, maybe walk on the treadmill for 20 minutes. And that's still better than not going. You're still pushing yourself to just go in general.
Yeah.
So I think you should try and probably have like a little bit positive of a mindset. Because I think having a positive mindset going into that, like, yes, it fucking sucks that you have to go at 10 o'clock at night and then you want to have to go home and go to bed and then wake up and do it again.
Yeah.
I think that'll help you build trust in yourself that will allow you to gain more out of like what you're already doing.
Yeah, instead of saying fuck, I didn't do enough, say at least I went.
At least, yes, at least you went. Definitely.
Because I feel, I mean, that is a good way to think about it, because I do feel like saying at least I went, putting it in a positive light like that, brings more motivation and more discipline versus saying fuck, I didn't do enough and dreading it every day because I'm not doing enough in my mind.
Mm-hmm.
But that's, again, just breaking the perfectionism cycle, which can be very hard to do.
And I think when you kind of do that and you have that more positive a mindset, I think over time you're going to build more trust in yourself, and you'll go one day when you think you're feeling weak, or after work and you think you're feeling weak, and you'll, excel and you'll do more than you thought you would. And I think that might spark that, wow, like I don't need to be so energized to be able to perform just as well. And it's kind of like, this is kind of an interesting correlation. It's kind of like golf, right? I've had this so many times. Like, you play golf and you have a shitty round. You get to the end, you get to the last hole, and you smoke a drive, like right down the middle. And you're like, I fucking love golf. It's like the same shit. You're gonna go to the gym one day, and it's like, fuck, like I don't want to be here. Like my workout sucked. And then you'll do like some curls, and you'll be like, holy shit,
fuck,
look at my pump. Look at my pump. I'm coming back tomorrow morning, Yeah. I think after a certain period of time, even for anyone, not just you specifically, I think putting, as long as you're continue to, do the work and put in the effort to go, there will be a point where you realize that you don't have to be perfect, and you can still get something really good out of it. And I think that's important.
Yeah. And I have a good understanding of that. It's just I haven't reached that point yet. Like, I know I need to reach that point, but I'm not there yet.
Mm-hmm.
And I think that's the problem. And a lot of that comes with discipline too, which I don't have a lot of.
I think that's okay, though. I think that's what is so important about realizing you don't need to be perfect.
Yeah.
I think people trying to be perfect, like, they literally came up with a freaking word for the people that try to be perfect, like being a perfectionist. I think it's, like you said, it's such a negative thing that realizing that you're not going to be perfect every time is going to allow you to just perform better overall. Like, nothing is ever going to be perfect. Perfect is such a subjective thing, and that's why I think you got to really try and keep it out of your mindset as much as possible.
Yeah.
So actually, I want to go into like kind of a related to like health. So there's a thing talking about, for example, I use a Whoop, and it's a health monitor because I wanted to try and optimize my sleep as much as possible, right? Because it basically tracks heart rate variability, heartbeat, how much you sleep per night, depending on, it gives you a recovery score based on how much of each, like REM sleep, deep sleep, or light sleep you get. So with these fitness monitors, there's coming to a sense like, yes, okay, you're being optimal by you're optimizing your life by getting this, but it's coming to a point where there might be insurance companies having you wear these things or checking out your data, like somehow invading your privacy, and then denying you insurance coverage because of it.
Because you have a predetermined medical condition.
So I think there's so many different, or at least a couple different topics when it comes to optimization that like it turns into a negative thing. Like, yes, you can optimize to a certain point where it becomes a negative thing, but then like you think you're optimizing, taking care of yourself, but then it actually hurts you in other aspects like insurance. Yeah. And I find that like very, very intriguing.
Yeah, because I mean, a lot of these things are like Fitbits and stuff like that. Those have come out in the past 10, maybe 15 years at most. I'd say closer to 10. I can't remember being 10 years old and Fitbits being around. I have no idea. So, yeah, and with all of these new things, it's like we don't know the repercussions of a lot of the new technology and the age of technology we're in now. And I don't think that we're going to have the answers to what's going to happen with these things like that. That's a very theoretical, because I feel like we won't see that for at least another 10 to 15 years. Because there's not, I don't know if they have the legs to do that legally now.
Well, the thing is I forgot what article it is. I think it was either, there's not really any like really credible resources that I found while searching up this topic. There was like one, I think it was like Android Central, was talking about how you can willingly go get a fitness monitor from certain insurance companies, and then they'll give you discounts because you're wearing a fitness monitor, so they can check like, okay, it's going to send you a notification if you have like a certain temperature, or it senses like some sort of ongoing disease in your body based on certain metrics.
Yeah.
So I think it's going to stem from that. People are going to accept an agreement to take on a fitness monitor, and then based on that, they're going to be a point where that insurance company is going to be like, we're just not going to cover you anymore because of these metrics that we see in your thing. So I think the rise of like people accepting these, because I would assume you have to accept some sort of thing depending on the insurance company. Because it says here that corporate partnerships like United Healthcare and Fitbit could pave the way for insurance companies to use fitness tracker data to deny coverage or even hike up rates for consumers.
Honestly, now that you say that, I do think 100% that will happen sometime in the near future. Maybe could be 5 years, 10 years, but sometime in the near future. Because, I mean, you look at now, they've only been a commonplace for maybe the past 5 or 10 years. But those little like car monitors, like I just switched to State Farm, and I have this little thing that I need to put in my car and connect to my phone with Bluetooth, and we start, because we have it in the cars, at a baseline 10% discount. And if you drive recklessly, you can go all the way down to 1% discount. Or if you're a saint behind the wheel and you don't ever brake hard, you don't ever accelerate hard, you drive like your 82-year-old grandpa, you can go up to a 30% discount.
Really?
Yeah. So I mean, I drive like a bitch sometimes, a lot of the time, because I know how to drive. The only thing that I think they could get me on is like speeding, because I take the highway almost everywhere I go. So sometimes I'm going 90 miles per hour, and I don't know how they dock that as a metric.
Yeah. So do you know if it's like based on speed or like how you like, your car movement?
It's hard turns. I think the main metrics they look at are hard turns, hard stops, fast acceleration, phone usage, and then maybe speeding too.
Phone usage.
Yeah, that's why you have to connect with Bluetooth. So if you're checking your phone while you're driving, they dock you.
Really?
And that's actually something that I brought up with my dad, like, how does this work? Because, like, say I'm driving somewhere with Maddie, my phone's connected to that and connected to music. What if she picks up my phone to go and switch the song? Are they going to say, hey, I'm a bad driver because my passenger picked up my phone?
Yeah, I feel like there's a lot
of gray area there.
Yeah, for sure.
So, and with the Fitbits and shit, I feel like there's going to be a lot of gray area there, too, because they could look at these metrics and say, hey, you have high blood pressure, high cholesterol, but what if they have a faulty Fitbit and you just raise their insurance rates because of it?
I would assume there has to be some sort of testing, or like, because I don't think this is a huge thing when it comes to like insurance companies offering discounts and stuff. So there has to be some sort of way to figure out if something's faulty or not. But I also agree that, like, I mean, for example, I don't know. I would assume that it doesn't look at like BMI, but like if you look at my BMI, it's
you're obese.
I'm either close to, like, on the fine line of like obese and overweight.
Yeah.
So it's like, okay, what metrics do you base this off of? Like, obviously, like, I think it might be heart rate, steps per day,
blood pressure.
I don't know if a Fitbit, it actually might, this does like blood oxygen. I'm not sure if that really would help them. I think there is ones that do Apple Watch though. So there's definitely some interesting metrics that, like, I would want to see kind of like studies about and see how they kind of differentiate.
How they're calculating.
Yeah, things. Because I feel like that's at some point, like, okay, I feel like Whoop is relatively known, but it's still on like the smaller end. Like, if you ask somebody, you know what a Whoop is, they're gonna be like, what the fuck is that?
Yeah, I asked you what the hell was on your arm the first time I saw it.
Yeah.
And you said
or like a Fitbit, everybody knows what a Fitbit is, or everybody knows what an Apple Watch is.
Yeah.
So I just feel like it's so crazy how, like, eventually so many of these things can turn into over optimization, or like when, let's say, somebody turns into they do like the what is the head thing that Elon Musk is
Neuralink.
Yeah. Who knows what they're going to do with that, to like considering like, oh, I'm going to optimize my mind by like being able to do all these things instead of like using a computer.
What's the fallout of that? And that's what we don't see yet with all these things, is what is the fallout going to be in 20 years?
Mm-hmm.
What if in 50 years, as a newborn, you get Neuralink implanted into your head? What's that going to do to the generations down the line?
I think that's really when it goes into the topic of ethical optimization.
Yeah.
So I think a really good question for this would be, how do you feel about dating specific people for the fact that you can have like professional athlete children? Like there's people out there that like, I'm only dating above 6'6" or 6 foot because I want my kid to be an absolute monster.
See, like I feel like it's a shitty thing to do, because like in that aspect, at least, if you're breeding, you're choosing your mate for life solely on the fact that they're this size and they could produce a child that size for you. What's that going to do to the child when you start them off in training for whatever sport you want them to play at 3 years old, and you beat it into their head that they're going to be a pro athlete and that's all they focus on in their childhood?
Mm-hmm.
What if they don't make it to the league? What if they spent their entire life being told that they were going to be a pro athlete because your mom only fucked this guy because she wanted athlete kids,
Mm-hmm.
and then they don't live up to the expectations? What's that going to do to that kid mentally? It's going to fuck him up for the rest of his life, and he's going to feel like he's never good enough.
Yeah, there's so many repercussions to like the idea of trying to breed children in a way to, make like an
Super
athlete or whatever.
babies, yeah.
And not just that. I think if you set out your life to be like, I'm only gonna date this specific pool of people,
You're never going to be happy.
You're never gonna be happy because you have to find a specific person that likes. I mean, I guess there's really two ways. Like, you try and find a person that, let's say you said, like, okay, they need to be 6 foot, but they also need to be funny. They also need to like what I like. They also need to do this and that.
And the pooled windows.
Yes. And then on top of that, I see these videos on TikTok where maybe it's not even just the fact that they want to create these perfect children, right? It's the fact that they want to have they want to date the perfect man. So they're trying to optimize the perfect man or perfect woman. Like, have you seen these videos where they're like, they go up to them and be like, okay, what age do you want to date? And they'll be like, let's say 24 to 32. How much money are they supposed to make? Like $500K a year. And how tall do they have to be? 5'11" and up. And then there's like a website, I think, I don't know what it is, but you put these metrics in and they're like, yeah, your chance of finding this person is like 0.1%. And they're like, I don't feel like that's that high of standards. Like, I want who I want, and I think that's okay.
Yeah, and the thing is, like, say you're thinking like that in your life. You're like, say you're a woman and you're like, I need a man that makes, he has 1.2 million in the bank. He has a $5 million house. He's netting at least 800,000 a year. What happens when you find that person and you're like, this is my perfect man, I'm going to be with you forever? And then that man's like, I don't feel the same about you, and they push you away. What's that going to do to that girl mentally?
Mm-hmm.
That's going to fuck them up. And I mean, that could lead to a lot more mental strain and a lot more mental problems than if they would have just said, I'm going to date someone that I enjoy being with and they enjoy being with me. Because I feel like that's all you really need in that aspect, at least. Like, there are, I feel like, certain situations where, not in the dating realm, that it would be ethical to do things like that.
Mm-hmm.
Like work experience, for example. Like, if, say, you're a CEO of a company, you're obviously going to look at those metrics and say, all right, well, this person has 10 years of experience here. He's made $500,000 a year at his last job. Yeah, I'm going to hire you. But that's an ethical way to do it because you're doing it for the gain of the business. Whereas if you're doing that in your dating life, or see, dating life, I feel like it's bad, but I was going to say friends, but I feel like if you're optimizing your friends, it's less bad because you're just trying to surround yourself with
good people.
You're not trying to be the smartest in the room.
Yeah, but the thing is, I do think there is a difference between, like, I don't think you search for a friend that's like, I need them to be freaking so tall. Like, I want to walk around tall friends because I'm insecure about myself.
But if you decide to spend more time around people like that versus people who are fucking bums, I feel like that's okay.
I do think, no, I definitely agree because, I mean, I think I do that myself. So I'm gonna support that topic for the fact that I think there is times where optimizing people around you is fine, but when it comes into trying to marry a certain person for a certain, if your reason is specifically to gain benefit in the future, like you're looking out into the future and you're like, I'm gonna gain some sort of thing from this person later on, I think that's when it comes kind of negative.
Yeah.
And what actually is interesting, kind of like branching off from kids a little bit. Have you heard of the movie Gattaca? Have you seen that movie?
I've heard of it. I haven't seen it.
It's like a movie where humans are set on a specific life course based on their DNA. So I think I watched this movie in maybe like junior high or something, or early high school, like freshman year or something.
Yeah.
But like they're trying to create the perfect humans to set off into space and like, you know, get them further into their space discoveries. So do you think at some point we're looking at like something like this where everyone's going to be like kind of like a test tube baby, and then the perfect society is going to try and get like kind of created?
I think it will definitely always be a theory, but I don't think any one group of people would necessarily have the power to do that. But at the same time, I mean, we were talking about conspiracy theories last week. There's all the conspiracy theories about the New World Order and the Illuminati trying to cut the population down to 10% of what it currently is. And I feel like part of that conspiracy is trying to make the top 10% of the world the only people here, because that would be optimization of the human specimen.
What's interesting is it's kind of a funny correlation, but there's an anime called Dr. Stone, and the idea of it is everyone turns into stone, and like random people like wake up and they can like get this certain liquid to like wake other people up. So the main character wants to wake everybody up because he's like, I want to save as many people as possible. But then the villain, he wants to annihilate all the old people so everyone's new, so they can get rid of the generation of like capitalism and just like all the old ways, so he can start his own society of the strongest. So it's kind of like that top 10% that they're supposedly trying to do, you know? And I mean, I do agree to the fact that it's probably not necessarily possible, for the fact that like there's just so many people you would need to get rid of. And I do think at some point there's going to be an uprising in whoever, doesn't matter, you know, we don't know who in the world is going to revolt against that.
Yeah.
The only way I think maybe could happen is like if we build some sort of AI and the AI just wants to take over the world, and then that's how it just annihilates everything. But other than that, I'm not really sure how it would be able to somebody would be able to follow through with that.
That is also the plot of Guardians of the Galaxy 3. Was it Guardians 3?
I saw it.
Yeah, because Rocket was part of the last generation before the perfect people. So it's...
Because that's what... Wasn't those all the people on that planet were created by that one guy?
Yeah, where he combined humans and animals and made the perfect specimen on the new Earth. So that, yeah, it's also brushed up on in that. And I don't think it's feasible, because I feel like I don't know, it's hard to say. I was going to say you need the negatives in life, because, like, let's look at it from a business perspective. If we didn't have 7 billion people on this planet and we only had the top 10%, the elitists of the world, those other 90% are the ones that are serving those elitists. And then what, like, are they going to make all of their own meals? Are they going to produce all of their own food? Are they going to own their own oil companies to produce their own oil? Like, where does the service aspect of it come in then, if you get rid of all of the lower down people?
Yeah, because it's like that 10% that you create, that's the new 100%, and then that 90% of that 10% is going to be the lower level that needs to provide for the upper 10% again, so or the 1%.
And you fall back into the same cycle over and over until you have no one left. You have only Elon Musk and Jeff Bezos, and then they do everything for each other.
Yeah, that just kind of puts into perspective that it doesn't make sense, and I don't think that's possible. But then it also just really emphasizes the kind of like the ethical consideration of like just the entire planet itself. Like, I think if somebody was to think of this plan and try and go out with it, they would hit that wall, especially to be like, we're not going to be able to provide for ourselves at some point without everybody else in the world.
Yeah.
Because everybody plays their own piece of the puzzle. And that's when I think when they try to optimize the entire globe or a certain country or whatever, it leads to distrust and just uprising.
And I mean, you almost have to look at it like a food chain. Like, yeah, that top 10% is at the top of the food chain, but without the bottom of the food chain, there is no food chain, and they still die.
Mm-hmm.
I wrote down another thing. This is one of the few articles I read. It's a Danish psychologist. His name is Sven Brinkman. He says that he worries that the Western world's self-help craze, the imperative to perform and be flexible and optimize yourself all the time, has become a pathological problem. Because he believes that we are so obsessed with looking inward and trying to achieve our ideals that it's actually made us less equipped to be a human on the outside, like caring about other people.
Mm-hmm.
And that we need to be happy all the time, but how can we be happy all the time if we're trying to be happy all the time?
Yeah.
And I do feel like that is definitely a really good way to look at over-optimization. Because, especially in the age of social media, I feel like we're always bringing it up, but trying to over-optimize, I feel like it takes away from your genuine time where you're not worried about whatever you have to do next, and it takes away, like you said earlier, from your relationships. And I feel like it can really almost take the joy out of life.
Well, yeah, because if you're constantly thinking about trying to perfect everything or optimize everything, it just leads into a pit of despair. And it's interesting that you brought up like the self-help books as well, because me and Nilo were actually talking earlier about how when people read self-help books, it's used to either help them in a way to like realize that, you know, they can become better, or I think for the majority, it makes it gives them a reason to identify with this specific problem that they have.
Yeah.
So if they're going to continue to, you know, these self-help books are doing, you know, they're meant to do good things, but then the other side, they're allowing these people to kind of recognize or kind of, you know, self-diagnose themselves with these problems. It's going to lead to a bunch of, you know, the society which we are filled with right now with mental issues and depression and anxiety.
And I feel like if you look at like 50 years ago, a lot of the problems that there are today, we didn't have those problems 50 years ago because there was no social media and you didn't have to worry about these types of things. So I feel like we're in a new realm where a lot of these problems haven't been solved yet because they're so new. So looking at like self-help books and stuff and how self-improvement is endless, at what point do you think you should say I'm at where I need to be and stop looking for optimization? Like, how do you draw that baseline of I'm optimized enough, but I'm not too optimized, in your opinion?
I think that's getting to a point where you need to just be comfortable with yourself, and realize that some things just aren't sustainable. To become as optimized as possible, it's kind of just like you need to be realistic with yourself that there is never going to be that sense of perfection. There is never a sense of perfection, and that setting your life goal out to becoming perfect is kind of like going into a black hole. So I think really trying to find that, okay, I'm good enough. Like, I don't ever think you should be complacent with yourself. I think you should continue to learn and build your knowledge, whatever it is, or try and, you know, optimize what you want to optimize. But once you kind of hit that point where you're like, I'm super bothered by this, I'm not sure if it's healthy or not, that's when I think you kind of have to take a step back and maybe not push yourself so much, or not have because I do think it stems from a sense of insecurity.
Yeah.
And then I heard this quote from, again, I think it was Chris Williamson. It is really thinking about what you want to want. Like, for example, if you want to become super jacked and you have a super aesthetic body, why do you want that? And that's because you feel insecure about how you look right now. And then you want to get a girlfriend because you think they'll like you when you get a girlfriend. But why do you want to do that? Because you were bullied when you were younger. And then the last, like, let's just say the last step is like, you just want to feel like you've accomplished something. Yeah. So instead of like starting at that point where like, oh, I want to get jacked, you just go to the last point. You skip all the in-betweens and go to that, what is that thing that you really want? Not like, because I don't think nobody really wants to, go into the gym every day and work their ass off. There obviously is a kind of like a deep down reason why they're doing that. They feel like some sort of insecurity, and finding that reason of insecurity and attacking that directly will help you find that line between wanting to optimize your life and wanting to become as perfect as possible.
Yeah. So, I mean, obviously you have a lot of science-based gym knowledge. Do you know what the Seiler concept of wave adaptation is?
I do not.
So it's used in exercise and endurance work, but it can be applied everywhere. Mm-hmm. And it's pretty much the law of too much of one thing isn't helpful to an overall improvement. And there's 3 waves in this concept. The first wave is you're learning something new. You don't actually get better at it. You just get better at the practice of doing it. So an example of it is bench pressing. If you've never benched, your arms are going to wobble the first time you did it. The next time you do it, your arms may not wobble as much on the same amount of weight. So you didn't actually gain any strength or anything. You just got better at the practice of doing it. Mm-hmm. The second wave is the bread and butter, the real gains. You've continued practicing and focusing on repeating results or reaping results. So this is where strength gains would be made in the benching, where you finally started to go up in weight and you're starting to see muscle growth and you're actually gaining something from it. And then the third wave is when you've gone too far. Any gains you've made here come at the expense of other abilities. So for the bench press, while you might get stronger, it will come at the expense of shoulder mobility and overuse injuries. And it's basically just saying that too much of a good thing is always a bad thing, and self-optimization at the expense of sustainability and balance will only lead to burnout. So I feel the whole point of that was saying that I feel like if you over-optimize, it leads to burnout, mm-hmm. and it will drive you into not being optimized at all.
That's actually funny because there's a topic or a term that I heard, and it's called menopause. So there's menopause, but there's menopause. So I don't know if I'm hitting that now, but it's like what the definition of it is realizing that instead of working out to become better looking, you work out to become, or you realize that you want to feel better instead of looking better. And that's what I feel like I'm kind of getting towards now. Like, obviously I want to cut and see what I look like, yeah. But I'm starting to kind of do a full circle and realize that I don't want to compete for bodybuilding. It's so toxic and like mentally draining, yeah. that I just realized I don't want to do it. But I just want to simply like feel good and just know I can kick anybody's ass.
Yeah.
It's just like knowing that I can't fucking touch my toes sometimes, but I've optimized, this, doing specific tempos on certain exercises, like doing bench a certain way, doing rows in a certain way to optimize this. It's kind of like doing the good thing ends up being a bad thing, because if you do something so much, you're going to lack in another area. And that's what I lack in. Like, I've done so many hours in the gym, just strength training, trying to build muscle, but I completely neglected the other side of it, where it's like, I want to be flexible and I want to be able to move. And like that's stretching. Like stretching, doing just mobility exercises and stuff. It's hitting that point where you like, I think your goals change over time, 100%. Like, I mean, it's kind of like working in seasons. So let's just say for 6 months of your life, you want to become a bodybuilder. You want to gain as much muscle as possible. But let's say at the end of that, you feel like shit, right? That next 6 months, you might just strictly train to be a runner and be flexible and, do something else. Try and do like cardio more often. And I think that's such a better sense of trying to optimize, for the fact that changing your sense of optimization over time will allow you to, one, not burn out because you're doing different things. Yeah. and two, you're going to build so many different aspects in your life that that will just allow you to feel better, allow you to, possibly look better. It allows you to kind of get deep down and, help you find that reasoning behind everything.
Yeah.
And that's why I feel like I get connected to so many different things, especially with like school and, like I said, like the menopause with like training. School specifically, I felt like I never really cared about optimizing school, but I can see the difference when I do.
Yeah.
Like I haven't hit that point where like I think I'm optimizing too much for school, but there are certain things where like you have to optimize to a good extent to be able to either get ahead or, get as much work done as possible.
Yeah.
I just started reading this book. It's called Deep Work, and it's actually in my backpack. It's not on the wall.
I was looking for it.
But it's pretty much how to focus in a distracted world. And I'm like 30 pages in, and it's really interesting because it's like trying to optimize your environment, like we were talked about before in a different episode, is, I think, very important. Having a closed environment where it's quiet and you can focus on things when you need to focus on things is super important. I don't really think that can turn into negativity unless you're literally sitting in like a black box in the middle of nowhere. I mean, actually, there is an example in that book that I said that I think somebody did that. But still, I think there is so many also positive aspects of trying to do optimization and stuff that you just really have to find that.
You have to find the fine line between regular optimization and over optimization, because one will lead to success and one will lead to burnout.
Mm-hmm. And it's just it's cool learning different tactics and stuff, because I had my own sense of optimization before I started researching for this topic. And once I realized, or even the perfectionism thing, like learning that there is 3 different types of perfectionism is really interesting, because you can really correlate with yourself with each one and ask yourself like why you feel this way. And I think there is a whole lot of importance of really just getting down to that. Why do you want a certain thing, and why do you want to optimize this, and why do you feel like you need to?
Yeah.
Because that will lead you to a reason why you feel insufficient all the time. That leads you to be imperfect, or leads you to be a perfectionist, or be an over optimalist,
Yeah. One more question I did want to ask before we wrap up. Do you feel it is possible, if you do it properly, to lead a successful life with the go with the flow mindset, leaving optimization to the wayside?
Do I think it's possible? Definitely. I think if you want to live just like a normal life, but the thing is like you could be happy living a normal life. So you could just go with the flow and not worry about whatever happens to you. But I do think there will be some point that you need a little bit of luck to be like, okay, I'm just going to go with the flow. I'm going to work at my job. I'm just going to go in, not care about whatever. As you get older, like things will happen. But like if certain things fall in the specific way, like you're able to live with your parents for your whole life, or there's some sort of aspect that allows you to continue to live that way. Like, because I think at that point you're complacent with like just going with the flow. Whatever happens. You have to have some sort of like, obviously like comfortability, but I do think at some point there you're going to hit a wall. Like you can try and go with the flow, but you're going to hit a wall at some point where I don't think it's possible.
Because you don't know what to do next.
Because not even that you don't know what to do next. I just think you're going to lead, like if you continue to work a job and if you just do everything the same, like you spend the same amount of money over, make the same amount of money over this certain period of time, inflation will obviously like go up and stuff. So like if you don't try and optimize your environment to kind of compete with the world, you're going to get left behind. So I think at some point you can live by going with the flow for a certain period of time,
but not forever.
Yeah. But then I guess that really just depends, because
everyone's definition
you could be dead by then,
Yeah, and everyone's definition of successful is subjective, but I do definitely think that's a good way to look at it, because with comfortable complacency, you will be left behind eventually.
Yeah, it's really tough to like kind of like put your head around that, because especially for me, I could never think about trying to be the same person forever, because I feel like I've changed so much in the last like 6 years that I couldn't imagine staying who I am and being okay with that for like the next 6 years. I feel like you would have to be, I mean, I hope no one out there is like this, but like I feel like you have to have some sort of delusion. You have to be a little bit delusional to just expect nothing to change ever. And that's why I think you will lead into you will hit a brick wall or go into a black hole, and you just won't be able to continue on with whatever you're doing.
Yeah. And
that's why I think I like the idea of trying to optimize or just continue to get better, for the fact that it allows you to always have something new to work on. And that's why I really like the idea of eventually like bringing people onto the show and interviewing people that we don't know or we do know about certain things, because there is how many other people on this earth that we could talk to?
Learn so much more from. And yeah, it's scary to think about. I mean, we've been talking about it off camera, and it is scary to think about how we went into the first episode like, holy fuck, how are we going to do this? Probably both a little anxious.
Mm-hmm.
And now we're comfortable with each other doing these every week, talking to each other like this. But when you bring a third person into it, it's that unknown again, and finding that comfortability with them. Mm-hmm. And especially when it's a new person every week and we're not interviewing the same person, I feel like you're never really going to have that comfortability. You might have the comfortability with interviewing someone, but you won't have the comfortability with that specific person ever. And I feel like that's while it's scary to think about, it shows progress, and it shows that we're moving forward and building skills from this, and it is a good thing, I feel like, as scary as it is.
Yeah, it's actually, that kind of reminds me of like how I felt going into the podcast. Like, for example, I feel like I had this like condition in my head that like, okay, I'm going to start a podcast or I'm going to do this whenever a certain condition is met, right? And I think when you told me like, hey, let's do it, that's when that kind of like went away, because I was expecting it all to be like, I have to make sure everything is perfect at this time or whatever. But like having a person like do it, like I feel like doing anything with someone is so much easier. And then again, like when we're thinking about talking to other people, we're not going to be perfect at that. And I think that's what is important about, if you're going to go into something new or something you want to improve on, you need to know that it's not going to be perfect, for the fact that like, I think if we were to do that and either, let's say they say something we don't like, or, you know, our question doesn't come out perfectly to them or something, that would lead to both of us realizing like, okay, maybe we shouldn't post this, or we shouldn't continue on with this. And like knowing that it's there's a learning curve when you try to either be perfect or try to optimize the show as much as possible. Because like, for example, I've been trying to think of like, what production quality could we do more right now? Like, I don't think there is much more that we can do unless we want to spend money outside of our means, right?
Besides getting...
Because like, yeah, exactly. Besides maybe some studio headphones, just some minor things. But like, I do think that we have some decent production quality for like the small like studio that we're kind of doing it in. And I think and some people, you know, could be that perfectionist and be like, this is not good enough. We need more, or it's not good.
Yeah, but at the same time, look at our production quality, just how it's improved in this is episode number 6. Look at the difference in production quality from week 1 to week 6. And if we didn't just take the leap and fucking record that first Saturday night, we would never be here, because we both would have been like, well, we don't have the production quality yet, we can't start, instead of putting fucking perfectionism to the wayside like we did and improving as we went. Like week 2, yeah, we had cameras, but it was one camera on both of us, and we had those shitty Rode mics. And listening back to fucking week 2's podcast versus one of the more recent ones, it's crazy. I literally texted you. It's fucking crazy the difference in quality from one to the other. So I feel like if we didn't ever take the leap and we were worried about being perfect in the first place, we wouldn't be where we are now with this.
Yeah. And that's why I think it's so cool to have like also I think when it comes to like, if you're thinking about doing something, just having that mindset of like, okay, what if I do post it? Where could this go? Like, obviously you shouldn't necessarily have that extrinsic value to it. But like, for example, we didn't post that first one. We didn't do that first one. We wouldn't be a month and a half into it already, which is just absolutely insane to have. This will be the 6th episode going up. And, you know, it's already impacted a good amount of people, and people have already talked about it with us. So it's like our lives would be so, like, I feel like in just such a short period of time, and just taking that step and realizing that being imperfect is the correct first step into doing something that you want. You never know what if actually could have happened. Yeah. And I think it's really cool. It's awesome. It makes me excited to have something to look forward to and to, you know, do research on and try and, like, you know, improve myself over time as well.
Yeah. And I mean, it's crazy the reach that we've seen so far. Just like the amount of people that have said, hey, I like heard you have a podcast, that you would never expect. People someone that I didn't know. Hey, you're my favorite person on the podcast. Shout out Julian. First time I had ever met him. And he's like, dude, I love the podcast. And then I saw him later that night and talked to him for 5 or 10 minutes about it at the gym. And it's nice, and it's crazy to see those things and see how we're doing things for other people, no matter how minuscule they may be, because it's when you've helped someone that you don't know, or even that you do know, I feel like that's a feeling that you can't get anywhere else.
Yeah, it's like having those, like I was saying earlier, how like I would like look at the 1-star reviews and see all the bad things. Yeah. I think hearing 10 people say something bad and then having one person being like, dude, you changed my life, or dude, you made me do this because I heard of something that you talked about in your podcast, outweighs all the negatives. Because I think in terms like that is perfect. That is doing as much as you can, and changing somebody's life to like even a minuscule amount is so important when it comes to thinking about if you should be perfect. Because like I said, perfect is subjective. Someone could think that this podcast was perfect and it helped them, and it really did. And then other person could just hate it. Like,
you guys sounded like fucking idiots halfway through. I'm not even going to listen to the rest.
Yeah, and that's one of the main things, is like why I was questioning making one to begin with, or even asking people to come on. It's like, I feel like I'm not perfect enough, so they don't want to come on. But like actually taking a step out and being like, hey, you want to come on? Like, we have a few guests in mind, and we're trying to get them on and trying to figure things out. And I think even just like messaging people, for me, trying to be kind of in that like rejection kind of state, like, oh shit, I don't know what they're gonna say, in a way that's working towards optimization, working towards being perfect, because you're continuously pushing yourself, and I think you do need to push yourself to try and get to these levels that you want to get to. And even optimization for the show as well. It's like, first show, just talk, second show, we figured out a topic, kind of talked about it a little bit, did some research. And I feel like research is getting more and more and more each episode. Yeah. And then like we're trying to figure out outlines, we're trying to make our Instagram better. We're trying to come up with different ways to have better intros, or like have engaging titles and stuff.
Get more reach.
Mm-hmm. It's like, I feel so excited to record and talk, just for the fact that like, you never know what's going to happen. Right. Yeah. And I feel like all the optimization and all the, the trial and error that I've went through when it comes to creating videos or not creating videos, or not posting or posting, has led to a lot of me having a clearer mindset when it comes to trying to be perfect. Because I do think at some point there is things that you should be perfect at. Yeah. Simple things, obviously. But you just have to be comfortable knowing that it will never be perfect enough for where you need to like be complacent.
Yeah, I don't know. I feel like if we let perfectionism weigh us down, there's no chance that we'd be here on week 6 right now.
Mm-hmm. And that's just not gonna hold. Like, I feel like the biggest thing when it comes to thinking about if you want to be perfect is just get started. Like, I know it's tough, and know it's super scary to kind of start something new, or realize that you aren't going to do something the best possible way, but having a mediocre plan that is consistent is better than having a perfect plan that isn't.
Yeah.
And we had a fucking mediocre plan coming into this. We just, I mean, it's better now, but the first episode was something else, you know? And even, you know, talking about guests, right? We're going to try and get guests in person, but then we also have to figure out how to use a online system to try and get guests who don't live by us, or we're not comfortable with that, or they're not comfortable with coming in person. So I just feel like being comfortable is so important when it comes to either thinking that you should be perfect and knowing that you're going to be uncomfortable. Like being comfortable with being uncomfortable is so important, trying to get out of that mindset of like, I need to be perfect all the time and trying to break out of that insecurity.
Yeah, I think that's a great way to look at it. Even though we're perfect now.
No, so perfect. Yep, with the background noise and the dogs barking in the back and Gengar in the backside.
Yeah, but I mean, we're part of the class that's making 100 pots this semester right now, and not a part of the class that's only making one. And I feel like because we've done that, we've made it a lot farther so far than I thought we'd be at this point.
Mm-hmm.
Like, I feel like what I had in my mind, we are leaps and bounds past that already, just because we trial and error, we kept trying new and different things.
Mm-hmm. And all I could think of is like, can you imagine like 100 episodes from now?
Yeah, where the fuck will be? We could have,
which is crazy, because that's like realistically that's practically 2 years.
Yeah,
if we do it every week, one every week, which I would hope we do more eventually.
Yeah,
but like if you have, I think it's a quote from Alex Hormozy, and it's like, to make one golden BB, you need 100 silver bullets.
Yeah.
Or the other way around, whatever it is. But that's just showing that you need to keep working at something over and over again to assume that you're going to even have the right to be perfect at something, right?
Yeah.
There was a quote that my basketball coach used to tell us, which I actually want to get your opinion on. And it was, practice doesn't make perfect. Perfect practice makes perfect.
See, that's crazy, because right before you said that, I was going to say practice makes perfect, because that was always beaten into my head as a kid. You're never going to be perfect unless you practice. I feel like, I don't think you can say perfect practice makes perfect.
I agree. Mm-hmm.
I think you have to say practice how you would play, which means you still need to be putting max effort into your practice. But if you go into with the mindset that it needs to be a perfect practice, or you're not gaining anything from it, you're going to lose more than you gain.
I totally agree.
So practice makes perfect. Perfect practice doesn't make perfect.
I agree.
But full effort practice makes perfect.
And I've disagreed with that quote ever since I heard it, because it never made sense with me. Like, practice makes perfect. Exactly. Like, obviously there's never going to be a sense of perfection, but when he's like, perfect practice makes perfect, nothing's ever going to be perfect.
Yeah, no.
So trying to act as if there is some sort of perfection in practicing, or like you have to have a perfect practice, is one, just super negative, and you're just going to put your team down, and that's why we fucking sucked.
Yeah. And I say he's a fucking idiot, to be honest.
And it's
you can't be a coach with that mentality.
You definitely can't. So that's why I have such a better outlook, like talking about this and, you know, building up to the person who I want to be and continually trying to work on who I am, makes me have that advice to myself that I would tell them, like, yes, it's hard. Yes, it's difficult. And you may think it sucks or whatever. As long as you continue to work at something, you will get there. You will get there.
See, I'm going to use video games as an example here.
Mm-hmm.
I really didn't learn that practice makes perfect, with gaming at least, until I started playing Tarkov, and you and Jeremy were both like, dude, if you want to get better, you need to fucking play by yourself. And I started playing that by myself and got a little better, but I also started playing like Rocket League by myself and other games by myself, and because I never wanted to play games unless I was playing with someone, because I didn't like the thought of, like, if I lose, it's on me.
It's all on you.
Yeah, it's all on me. And I didn't like that, so I wanted a crutch there to help me or carry me. And once I started doing those things on my own, it really taught me that, like, I am not going to get better unless I practice, and I practice by myself.
Because that's that's just like building the sense of trust that if you can work good by yourself,
you're going to be able to work good with others.
Exactly. And that's kind of what I had the problem with Fortnite is I was trying to optimize everything else except for playing the game. And yes, my favorite mode was playing by myself, but I also would rather play with somebody else. So I waited for people to get on. I waited for, specific conditions to be met for me to act on something. Yeah. And I think that's why I think actually acting on something rather than either waiting for somebody to do it or, like, for example, in that Tarkov aspect, I feel like you learn so much more by just going simply doing a certain route, like running a certain route, looting a certain route. And, going in, even when I think about Tarkov, right? It's such a hard game that I don't understand how I could, because I had this perspective too. I don't understand how I could have had the thought that I'm just going to be instantly good at this game without going in and dying 1,000 times.
I'm in the Reddit for it, and there's thousands of people that are like, I have 1,500 hours and I still fucking suck.
Yeah, it's like how...
Once you hit 1,500 hours, that's when you start really playing the game.
Yeah, but then it's also like, what did you do during those 1,500 hours? Did you fight people? Did you do jump peaks and run around corners and
try new things
and try and kill people and try and be an absolute maniac? Because you'll watch streamers, you'll watch clips and be like, how the fuck did this guy do that? He must be insane or he must be cheating. When in reality, he has 5,000 hours in the game doing that exact thing. Now, I was talking to Neil about this is when I played Valorant, or even, I think it's more Valorant. When we played competitive, I was super scared with being, going in first. I forgot what entry fragging. Yeah. So I was super scared to do that, so I just wouldn't do it. And I couldn't put the concept around my head that I needed to do that to, one, not be scared to do it, and to, two, to get better. Yeah. So it's like, if I had a team and we sucked at something, I would make sure for however long, that's exactly what we would do. If we sucked at entry frags, everybody would switch off, or one person would do every entry frag for that certain time. And that's why I think I actually would be not a decent coach when it comes to esports, because I fucking have no clue when it comes to that stuff. I think just in the basis of just telling people that you need to go do what, you suck at this, go fucking do it. You need to be realistic with yourself and be open-minded to learn and make mistakes and be comfortable sucking for a long time. No one has been good at something without sucking at it first. Yeah. And that has such a big correlation to optimization and trying to be perfect, because that's the main concept. You need to be making mistakes. You need to failing. You have to be imperfect. You have to be imperfect so many times to excel in those times that it matters.
Yeah. And I feel like a lot of people don't realize that. They want to be good at something instantly or not do it at all.
Mm-hmm. And I had that mindset for so long.
I do too. I still do sometimes with a lot of things that if I'm not going to do it perfect, I'd rather someone else do it.
And it's for even going back to the podcast aspect and talking. I feel like I listened to the last podcast and I feel like I sounded like an idiot. So I looked up certain things to do to practice speaking, right? I've been, looking at my notes and actually trying to do active recall and remember what I'm supposed to be saying, or remember certain concepts and talking it into the camera and then listening back to it, so that I can learn from the idea of what my mistakes are. For example, one of the main reasons, I don't remember I feel like I've definitely talked about this before, but the idea of we started the podcast itself, but the first idea I heard with it was just get with a friend, doesn't matter who it is, put a phone on the table, make it really quiet and talk. You don't even have to post it, and then listen back and learn about what you did wrong. And that's why I like listening to these back, because I learned things that I, didn't necessarily know the first time we did a podcast. I guess it was probably the second one because we didn't have any video, but you can notice some, certain aneurysms or certain things that you do by just simply doing what you want to get better at.
Yeah. Yeah. I really just want to beat into the head the fact that practice does make perfect, and you will never be perfect without practice. So stop worrying about being perfect and just fucking go do it, whatever it may be. Mm-hmm. Stop thinking that you're not going to be perfect so you can't do it, and just go try.
I believe it was in the Deep workbook that I was reading. It was the topic that people think that when they do something, they get good at something. They think they need to continuously do that same thing to continue to get better. But in reality, you need to do things that you suck at. You need to be miserable while you're you're learning. You need to be miserable while you're learning a video game or doing a new trick in a video game. Like, the part that's having fun is the part that's easy. Like, you already know how to do certain things. Learning is meant to be miserable. Like, you're not going to learn unless you're having, I think you're not going to learn now in my head unless you're having a poor time. You're struggling with it. Like, for example, yesterday I think it was Monday actually. I looked at my assignments for my coding class, and I looked at it and I was like, I have no fucking idea how to do this. Like, literally no idea how to do this. Yesterday, I read like 2 chapters. Everything kind of like came back, and not everything, but like I looked at the program and I'm like, okay, how do I do this? I really thought about it. I really like sat with the concept, and I finished it. Like, I figured it out without even really looking anything up. Yeah. And it was just like, because I made my mind work and I put myself in that uncomfortable situation, that's when your mind adapts to new things. I was trying to think of like a specific term, but like that's when your mind really adapts to problems and stuff, is when you're putting yourself in those situations that you don't know, because it makes you think and it makes your mind grow. And I think that's just knowing that, I feel like it's a cheat code to trying to become good at anything.
Yeah. Which, I mean, you found the cheat code for that, because you're fucking a god among people at anything you try.
And that just makes me think too, like how many things I could have been better at if I would have known that before. Because like I put in effort. I think junior year was my biggest year when it comes to putting as much effort into sports as possible. I think that's, if I had that mindset of like, I knew I was going to get better even when I'm sucking, I feel like I would have excelled so much more. And I do think it comes to a point where I was listening to this other podcast earlier, and this guy was saying how, not that I think I'm diagnosed with like ADHD or whatever, but there is like this stigma of, if you're lazy or you can't focus, like you don't have, like, for example, I felt like I couldn't focus in school. It was because I didn't care what I was learning about. I felt like I might have had ADHD. I might have thought like, oh, I would perform better if I had some sort of pill that like made me focus or whatever. And he was saying that the topic is kind of, it's underdosed and overdosed. Underdiagnosed and overdiagnosed. So like some people will say like, oh, I can't focus. I need something to help me focus. When in reality, they just don't know how to do work. Like, they don't know how to get something done without having some sort of distraction on them. Or it's underdiagnosed, where I feel like someone like me, like, yes, I might think, okay, there might be something wrong with me. I just think I'm lazy. Like, in a way, I feel like in high school, I was just like, I'm just lazy. I feel like if I actually put some time into it, or, I mean, I feel like I proved myself that times. Like, if I put some time into it, it would actually make sense. But, like, I was also so lazy that I didn't think I needed, like, some sort of supplement to help me.
Yeah. See, I mean, I definitely feel I'm in the same spectrum as you, where I do think I'm underdiagnosed, and a part of that is just the way I, like, growing up, my family wasn't into, like, hey, you might be fucked up, you need to go see a psychiatrist. Mm-hmm. Like, that shit just didn't happen in my house. So I've never really been diagnosed with much in my life, even though I feel there's a chance I may have these problems. But at the same time, I look at myself and say, like, I'm not diagnosed with these problems, so I shouldn't say that I have them, and I shouldn't use that as an excuse.
Yeah, I think that's a huge issue, especially when it comes to learning in school, is people, or same thing with like the self-help books. They self-diagnose themselves, and then they convince themselves that they are this person, they are this certain way. So then they eventually get something that they don't need. Yeah. And then they're on it for the rest of their life because they think that they need something to be able to think. And that's when it comes to over-optimization. It's the same thing with me trying to have a certain pre-workout before the gym, is I'm convincing myself that I'm not going to have a good workout unless I have that. It's the same thing with drugs, especially for the fact that they're more potent. They're more, like, I don't know what's the word. They're stronger. Like, they're actually they're supposed to do that rather than like a pre-workout. Obviously there's things in it, but like,
if you go take a fucking amphetamine, that's
like Adderall or fucking Vyvanse, like, exactly, like those things are meant to change your mind. And now I do think, of course, there is situations where, if you fit a certain criteria, you should definitely get something. But I think it's just so crazy when you realize, like, you do need it sometimes, and like sometimes you just have to realize that you just have to change your environment or work on yourself to be able to, because like, for example, with you said you think you might have it or whatever, but you can sit on fucking CS and play CS for hours and fucking focus on the shit for hours.
Locked in. Yeah.
Yes. So it's like, that's when I think you look at it is like, what are you interested in? And focus on that, because you can obviously focus on something.
Yeah.
But I don't know.
And it's like, I've had so many people, like, especially at work, I have had so many people say, yeah, you have fucking ADHD. There's no chance you don't have it. And I'm still kind of like in denial about it and doubtful about it because I've never been diagnosed. And like, yeah, there's times where I'm like, I think I might have ADHD, but there's other times where I'm like, maybe I don't. And it's, maybe I'm just fucking lazy. Maybe I just can't focus because I'm not interested.
See, that's really that relates to that podcast I was saying, how he's talking about like Adderall and stuff, and it was a Modern Wisdom podcast that actually just came out with, his name's Destiny.
Yeah.
And he was saying how like he felt the same. He could play video games for 16 hours straight, focused in, and he just didn't like he could perform well on tests, didn't like doing homework. His GPA sucked because he wouldn't do the homework, and he's like 30 something. Recently, his friend was like, hey, like, you seem like you have some sort of ADHD. Like, just take my Adderall for like a week and see how you feel. So basically, he ended up saying that after he took that, it was like, I think he said that Adderall kind of has to, you're like on like an amphetamine high for like 3 or 4 days. And then once that goes away, he was like, I was able to take in so much more information. I was able to read things and like actually understand them. So I mean, it might be worth it to go get it checked out. Because like he's like the last 6 months, prior to his streams, he like had to like play a video game at the same time as talking and like had some sort of distraction. Now he can literally have like the literature that he's reading, whatever the chat is talking about. He can dive deep into it, do research, and like absorb everything because he was taking this. Because he was taking, he takes 5 Ns now.
Same
So
difference.
yeah, but like. Still, it's like there could be that sense of optimization where that you do need it.
And like, I don't know, it's scary to think about, like, maybe I do need something like that because I've gone my whole life without it. But at the same time, if I've needed it for the past 24 years and then I get onto it now, imagine
exactly.
it could help me take my life back.
Yeah, and that's kind of like for me too, is like I kind of have like this stigma for myself that like I don't want to be known as someone that has to be reliant on something.
Yeah.
So that's when it comes to, I mean, obviously it kind of is with like caffeine. I don't think I'm like reliant on caffeine, but I think that's kind of like the fine line for me is like when it comes to like going to the gym or whatever, or just getting through a day. But it's like the same concept, being reliant. I don't want to be reliant on something, but then also there is the positive side to it where it could literally change your brain, unlock a whole other side of your brain that you never knew you had because you were undiagnosed or you just never thought that you should, or you had like this expectation for yourself to be perfect. Yeah. Where it's like, if you have this pill, you're not considered perfect anymore. So maybe we should both get tested.
Yeah, let's make a psychiatrist appointment.
I don't know.
I don't think honestly, like, I don't think it's a bad idea. I think maybe we both should.
I don't know, because I've been able to focus on school. So like for my example with this, it's like back in high school I couldn't focus on shit. Like I didn't care at all. But now I don't know if it's just like my sense of feeling behind, or it's just like me being more mature. I can focus better now, Yeah. Because I do feel like obviously like our brains change, especially over 7 or 8 years. But for the fact that like I feel like I can focus more if I sit in a dark, like a room, quiet, and actually sit there and you take distractions away and focus, I can do that. I just feel like I couldn't do that before. So it's like, then it goes back to like, do I really need this? Am I being, am I just self-diagnosing myself because I want that little upper edge to be as close to perfect as possible?
Where I'm on the other side of that, where I feel like it's gotten worse for me, where like someone will be talking to me and I'll just completely dissociate and start singing a song in my head and won't be listening to a word they say. And then like after like 2 or 3 minutes of that, I'm like, fuck, I'm supposed to be listening. Yeah. I listen for another 30 seconds and it happens again.
That's interesting too, because I do feel like I have a problem of listening to people as well. Like I'll be just like, let's say I'm talking or I'm in the car with Neela and she'll be talking and I'll just like look straight and I'll see like a license plate and I'll just be like, blah, 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 blah. And then I'll be like,
fuck, she's like, I wasn't listening.
I was like, wait, what did you say? And she was like, or whatever. She'd like, and it makes sense. Cause like, realistically, I feel like I'm so focused on multiple things at the same time. Yeah. I've actually never really looked up the symptoms of like having ADHD or whatever, so I don't really have an idea. But by the sounds of it, like, I mean, it's attention deficit disorder or whatever.
Attention deficit hyperactive disorder.
Yeah.
But I mean, there is two sides of the spectrum with it too, because like I feel like sometimes I can't focus at all, but on the other side of it, sometimes I feel like I can hyper focus.
Exactly.
And I feel like that's the two sides of the spectrum with ADHD, where you have both when you have it.
No, it's also interesting too is, did you know that I was listening to another podcast? I listen to a lot of fucking podcasts. It was about dopamine. So the idea of like optimizing your environment when it comes to, let's just go with training, right? Having that pre-workout, having that meal, I guess it's having the meal, having the pre-workout, doing a certain warm-up, whatever, that actually attacks your sense of dopamine for the fact that like getting that caffeinated drink before the gym gives you a sense of dopamine, right? So if you constantly do this every single day, you go to the gym, it's like that little dose of dopamine. So like when you drink that, your dopamine level goes up. And then once that goes away, it actually drops below base level. So your dopamine's lower. So you feel less motivated or have less drive. And you do that for years and years and years.
And your baseline
tanks. So to fix that, in this podcast, it was by Andrew Huberman. He was saying that basically make your dopamine, like, okay, let's just say that drinking, for example, your dopamine levels, like, make it random. So like ask someone or just flip a coin. And like it's 50-50 chance that it lands on heads. If you say you get a drink, if it lands on heads, cool. If it lands on tails, you just go without it. Or same thing, he actually did it with music in the gym. I could fucking never do that shit. I would never do that shit. I should try, but yeah, he's literally like flip a coin for the caffeine, and then flip a coin for the music. And maybe you get a day where you go with no caffeine, no music, and you just have to fucking just rep it out and just do it. Lift, no phone, nothing, just go in.
So fucking angry.
And I do think, like, I feel like that's kind of giving to the level of, like, over optimization, but, like, that doesn't really necessarily affect, like, your mental at that point. It's just, it does really push you to build that trust within yourself.
Yeah.
Obviously, long-term wise, it's better for, like, your dopamine levels. And I think that's a really good idea. But then I also think you should enjoy yourself. Like, I think if you really love going to the gym and that caffeinated drink or that, energy drink or pre-workout makes you that much happier, like you look forward to doing that every day, I think you should do it.
Yeah.
I think that's when it comes to the fine line of obviously over optimization. Like if you really care about your dopamine levels I don't know what or how much your dopamine levels change based on like the energy drink that you taste. I just really don't think it's that much, but I do believe that if you enjoy that, you should do it. And same thing with anything. I think you should do the things you enjoy over trying to optimize everything, because that takes your passion away from doing things and leaves you bored over time and
leaves you in despair.
For sure. And it's just it's cool. It's just interesting to think about it is cool to know that you can optimize things in so many different ways.
And you can find your pattern of optimization.
Yeah, exactly. And I think that's cool. Like your sense of optimization is going to be different than my sense of optimization. And I think that's cool. And I think that's fine.
Yeah.
And I just think finding your own, that's when I think it gets to where's that fine line is find it within yourself, find out what works for you.
Only you can find that fine line.
Because that will have, I think leaving or getting more optimized for me definitely has led me to have more excitement for things, especially in the gym. I think becoming and realizing that you can do something better that will make either your life better or have a better efficiency when it comes to doing whatever exercise or just working on a project or whatever it is. It does leave a sense of enthusiasm and passion, because it's like, cool, I learned how to do this. Now I can do more in a small period of time.
Yeah, now I can master it.
Mm-hmm. And just continue to build on those steps.
Yeah.
And it's just crazy. It's a topic I really enjoy talking about, to be honest. It's cool.
I enjoyed this one too, just because it did help open my mind to a lot of these things.
Mm-hmm.
Because I mean, it's definitely something that I have always struggled with, perfectionism and being able to optimize things.
Yeah, it's just I also think that you really just have to, like, for example, in your sense, you have to realize you are optimizing as much as you can right now. Like, you're doing your best. Like, you're not doing nothing. And I think to anybody, like, if you're thinking about that you need to make a change,
at least you're
it's
conscious.
a start. You know that you're doing it, and that's the best start. I think that's really just having, it's just like the best circumstance you can have is knowing that you should start making a change, and it's important for everybody to understand that.
Yeah. Well, I am about to piss my pants, so I think we wrap it up here.
Cool. Appreciate you again.
Appreciate you.
Enjoy the conversation.
Yeah. Today was another enthralling one.
Yeah,
for me.
we have me and Neela had like a brainstorm session like the other night, and we came up with like technically, well, now we have like 6 topics.
Yeah.
With a couple ideas of people coming on. So I have like the 4 next like topics for, it would just be like us and then a few guests that we would have. So we have a lot lined up, and we're excited to show you guys, especially
we gotta drop the 2024 roadmap.
Yeah. It's crazy, dude. Where cause like the one, like, did you watch that clip that I sent you that it was about the podcast? Cause I said this before, but it was out of all podcasts, 10% make it to episode 3, right?
Yeah.
And then 90% of that 10% make it to episode 20. So like we talked about this in the first episode, but like we're almost halfway there, and we're excited and we're ready to keep making more, and it's crazy. Like we're gonna make it to that top 10%. We're gonna make it to the 1%, you know? Yeah. And it's like exciting. So
we are the next JRE experience.
Dude, that would be
nuts.
Crazy. I'm complacent. I'm not complacent. I'm happy with I'm ready to look back on the time where we're sitting in this room doing our podcast. It makes me excited. Yeah. It really does. Appreciate you. Thank you so much.
You too.
See ya.